Um, Welcome everyone to this second knowledge session of KZA this evening. And I'm very happy to see you all here. We are with more than 30 people at an evening after work. For David, it's in the morning, but for us all, it's evening time. Happy to have you here again. The first session of the second session around our topic this year, QA in DevOps, and we've invited two speakers, Dave van Herpen and Bas Dobbe, who will both zoom in on the topic of ownership within companies who are moving to DevOps. As we all know, ownership is an important topic, or maybe a prerequisite in getting the value of the DevOps promise. And I think it will be an interesting evening with two topics zooming in from a specific level, one from more portfolio level, one more from team level. The evening is structured around these two stories. We will start with the story of Dave van Herpen, and Dave will introduce himself. I will only shortly say that I have been working with Dave some years ago, and I still remember him as DevOps Dave. So when we were busy discussing this topic, there was already one person coming into my mind who would be a perfect person to give the scene. And I'm very glad you joined us today, Dave, with your story and your experience.
Yeah.
And you will do the kickoff tonight.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Marit.
Glad to have you here. And after the story of Dave, we will have a short break that will be around 10 to 8 for us here in Holland. So within 45 minutes. And after the break at 8 o'clock, then will Bas share his story. Bas is our own colleague, active at Jumbo. In the midst of the bananas, I see on his background today. And Bas will also share an interesting story about ownership in his team and how he made important improvements over there. We will round off the evening around 10:30. And we all like an interactive part. I see everyone, almost everyone muted his microphone. That's okay. But it's also okay if you want to ask something just to unmute or to use the chat. I will guide the chat. I will check if there are any questions. The speakers have told me that asking questions just during the presentation is okay. If you feel to guide them up, to ask them later on after the session, it's okay as well. So do what suits you best. Make it a nice evening, and then Dave, I will pass the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Marit. You have the cool job to try to time box me.
Yeah.
Good luck with
It's a
that.
very exciting job. I will do my utmost best.
I can imagine. So when I will be sharing my screen in a minute, I will not be able to see because I have two screens, but I will probably not be able to see the chat coming in. So if there are any questions, please feel free to just jump in and scream as loud as possible, and I will shut up, and then we can answer some questions. Because if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in, ask them, whatever, to make it interactive. If you don't want to do it immediately, you can also do it after the session. I will try to share my screen right now.
So during our last test, it worked perfectly. So there it comes.
Oh, wait 1 second. No, sorry about that. This is the one.
There it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see it.
Do you also see the little team screen on the right bottom or not?
Yes.
I see a question, Dave.
Okay.
And I will
Yeah.
answer that because there was a question if we could see your face. And now I highlight the face of Dave. Bart,
Yeah.
your
Does it
question,
work?
service delivered. Now you see who's talking. Good
Okay,
that you
perfect.
said it. I will stop the spotlight.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And of course, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to share some experiences that I have on DevOps transformations. My idea of the next, let's say, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, is to go through some lessons learned from a number of DevOps transformations that I was involved in, by means of actually not sharing what went well, but also mainly sharing what went wrong. So what are typical mistakes you can make in doing a DevOps transformation? And in doing so, I will also be sharing the links, specific links to ownership, because we will see that at different levels in the organization and also from business to IT, but also from strategy to operation, we see a number of perspectives or lenses that you can have on ownership. And I will just be sharing those lessons. And at the end, I have a specific case study of an example of an experience I'm still involved in at this very moment. And I will be sharing some of the main lessons from that DevOps transformation itself as well. Let's just see what kind of questions drop in during the session. But just to give you an idea on who's talking to you at this moment, let me see if this works. Yeah. My name is Dave van Herpen. I've been an independent consultant since almost 2 years now, and before that I worked with several consulting companies like Society and Quint. And from there, I helped a number of organizations in their lean, agile, and DevOps transformation. So in becoming high-performance organizations, whether it was teams or value streams or the entire organization on a portfolio level, I have been coaching, consulting, or training people and teams and entire organizations in, actually showing ownership at the end. But in the end, it was mostly to create a high-performing way of working. And here you see a number of companies and also public organizations I was involved in. Now, in order to say something about the key lessons and the key things that I learned in the DevOps transformation itself, by sharing some epic fails. First, we need to talk about DevOps itself, because the thing with DevOps is if you ask 10 people to frame DevOps or to define DevOps, you get 11 different answers. So first, let's make sure that we have the same understanding by having two really simple slides. First, why are we talking about DevOps transformations? What good does it do? What kind of value does it deliver? Well, it delivers, if you're doing it right, it delivers happier customers and happier employees. Because you get less frustration from developers, people who used to be testing, and people from operations who will all be joining, those happy teams. But also you will create happy customers, because you will not only be focusing on creating products that you deliver to the shelf, to the market as soon as possible. You also need to make sure that they actually perform in a good way, that you monitor them continuously, and that you improve on them on a continual basis. So you also get happier customers. Second is you get better quality, so you get better coach, you get better, actually better value for your money. Third one, and also because of the better feedback loops, of course. Third one is you get it faster as well. So you get faster cycle times, faster lead times, and faster actually delivery times from a product to get to the market. Also, you will do it in a smarter way. We used to have a lot of silos in the IT organization. We have them less and less. And if we still have them, we try to connect those silos. So we do it in a more effective way in view of delivering some value to the customer in a safe and fast fashion. And last but not least, we also deliver it in a more safe way because yes, we still run some risks, but we try to build in possible risks, compliance, security, etc., into our products and into our way of working. So we have happier, better, faster, smarter, and safer as the key drivers for the DevOps way of working. If we then try to scope DevOps, what I always tend to use is to use this, which I'd like to call the perfect storm. Because if I explain DevOps and the key principles of DevOps, like you build it, you run it, to a, let's say, 61-year-old COBOL engineer, he will tell me, okay, but I did this 40 years ago already. And I understand this because 40 years ago, that same person also did the design, build, test, and run itself. However, right now we have a contextual, contextual convenience. So we have a number of methodologies and events and themes that all come together and make DevOps to what it actually is. So it is a combination of lean practices, of agile way of working, also a new architecture. So having a loosely coupled architecture with microservices, etc. It's a new way to look at IT service management and operations. Also, of course, it is also about technology because, of course, you could, and that's also why I have shown this as a Venn diagram, because you still could do DevOps without using cloud. But the eventual advantages, the eventual benefits will be much less than if you would use cloud. Same goes for CI/CD, so having pipelines in place, having a continuous deployment of your products into production. That is also a very crucial element of a DevOps way of working. So actually it is a combination of those aspects that make DevOps to what it is. So actually it is a combination of people, process, and technology. Yeah, so this is actually what DevOps is. So DevOps is not a part of Agile, Agile is not a part of DevOps, but it's just a different perspective. And if we look at a recent transformation where organizations have tried to evolve towards the DevOps way of working, we have seen that most of those transformations, all of those transformations have been learning journeys. Learning journeys meaning that things do not go right just from the start. So this means that it is important to really learn from experiments in your organization, learn from things that go wrong or things that go right, and build from that on. That's also why I'd like to share some good practices or some bad practices with you as well. So right now I will show 5 epic fails, and I will do a countdown from number 5 till 1. From epic fails in organizations that have tried to adopt the DevOps way of working. And actually the first one I'd like to show you, so number 5 of ways to actually screw up your DevOps transformation is to keep calling it a DevOps transformation. And let it work in for a while, because the thing is, the more we use those fancy, shiny methods that people should be converting to, the less people will understand the why behind it. And that's exactly what's happening with DevOps. People hear the term DevOps and they will search for an association with it. So when they hear DevOps, they think, oh, let's put some developers and operators in one room or in one team, and then we're done, right? Or we have them use the same tools, and then we're done. And what happens next then is that we also get terms like BizDevOps or DevSecOps or whatever term will suit you. And the thing is, the more we start putting emphasis on the term itself, and especially the term DevOps, the more we drift away from the actual meaning of this. And that is exactly the point in any DevOps transformation. It is truly crucial that everyone really understands the why behind the DevOps transformation and not the label DevOps itself. And I often use a metaphor, which is this picture that you see right here. Not sure if anyone has heard of Johnny Cash, the singer. If you haven't, shame on you. One of the most famous, but also one of the better songwriters that we've had in the past, let's say 50, 60 years. And he made a song which was called A Boy Named Sue. And in that song, he told a story about a boy who was named Sue by his father. And he really hated his father for this. But he hadn't seen his father since he grew up, since he was 1 year old or something. Because his mother and his father divorced. And he really said to himself, whenever I will meet my father, anytime in the future, I will kill him. Because I have been bullied in school. People fought me because of my name. I've had a terrible childhood because of my name. So I really hate him for that. And then at a point in time, he walks into a saloon and he sees his father. He sees a face of a man, and it reminds him of the pictures he had from his childhood. And they get into a conversation. It becomes a fight, and they almost kill each other. And then at that point in time, his father tells him, "Do you even know why I called you Sue?" And he said, "No, I don't know." And his father said, "Well, it's because I knew I wouldn't be there for you because it didn't go very well with your mother and me. So I knew I would have to leave, and I wanted you to be strong. I wanted you to be resilient. I wanted you to be, to be able to fight for yourself because I couldn't dare for you to protect you." And then they hug each other because it's of course it's a happy end and it's an American song, of course. But the thing is, it is really far more important that people understand the why behind the name. So why was the name DevOps even a thing? Then they understand the label itself. And the thing we see around us is that you're being thrown all over the wall with DevOps, DevOps, DevOps. And if people do not understand what it actually delivers, so I told you that it should make your customers more happy, it should make your delivery times faster, it should increase your quality, etc. So you should focus on those things, on the actual goals and the business goals that you have, instead of having a new label being brought into a company. Because I've been in too many transformations where people first had an agile transformation, and with, for instance, they started using Scrum in their team, then they started using Safe or Spotify or Less or whatever. And then now DevOps is coming in, and then in 1 year they have DevSecOps, and they all see that as different labels. Whereas if you look at it from another perspective, they may just deliver the same outcomes as they did before. Just maybe a bit better, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit faster, but keep focusing on those values and the why behind it instead of the labels itself. So this is actually the #1 epic fail, is to keep calling it the DevOps transformation. The second one is that if you look at the way that a lot of organizations are approaching a DevOps transformation, is they approach it from a perspective of let's say a predefined linear roadmap, as if it would be a change initiative that you can plan beforehand, and it will go exactly as you plan at first. Any transformation, especially if it involves people, and especially if it involves complex organizations and landscapes, also with external suppliers and with your customer landscape, etc. We're talking about complex changes. We're not talking about a simple thing which you can just plan, let's say 1 year or 2 years ahead. And the key objective behind this is if you want to move towards a new way of thinking or working, in this case, the DevOps way of working, so you're moving from A to B, please make sure you do this in the way of B. Don't go from A to B in the way of A. So if you want to move towards a new way of working, where you have small increments, where you have small batch sizes, where you have continuous improvement, where you're actually trying to get to a culture of engineering and experimentation, please do not do this by means of having a Big Bang, Gantt charted, project management led, large transformation without any experimentation or whatsoever. So please make sure that as soon as you are in a transformation where it says now our DevOps transformation and it's shown a large plan which does not show any experiments, please make sure that you run away. And the thing behind this is this model, and this is probably the model that has helped me most in my transformation efforts in the past 10 years. It's called the Cynefin model. You write it like Cynefin, but it's pronounced as Cynefin. It's a Welsh word. And it was originated from Dave Snowden, from Cognitive Edge. And it actually means habitat. And it is sort of a sense-making model. So it helps you to define your environment, to define your context. And based on the context you're living in, or you're working in, or you find yourselves in, it is based on that context, it helps you to define the right response model. So this means that if you're in an obvious environment, it is best to use best practices. Because what works at company A will probably also work in company B. And the way to respond is in this kind of environment, with this kind of questions or problems, it is to see what's going on, you sense, and if you see what's going on, you probably have a standards change or a standard service request for this. So you categorize it, and that's the way that you respond to this. So a lot of standard stuff that you're doing in your team or your organization, which can be automated and standardized, that is in your right bottom. Now, there's also a lot of things that happen around us that are complicated. And that means that you need to analyze first. So you need to gather information, and based on the information that you get, you are able to have a good response on that. So you can, at max, use good practices. So you can see how another organization has tackled this, and then you tweak it because of your own context. It's a bit like a Ferrari. So if you want to decompose and then reconstruct a Ferrari, as long as you have knowledge or you have someone who knows about Ferrari, you will be able to have it drive after construction again the same way as you did before. But a lot of contexts that we find ourselves in currently are in the left top corner. They're in a complex domain. And this is where you cannot just analyze your way out of it. In the left top domain, you need to have, in the complex domain, you need to have a response model which helps you to experiment or probe. And then based on the results of the experiment, you can actually give a good response on that. So you validate your experiments and then you base your response on this. And you have enabling constraints which actually help you to find the right responses for this. Agile ways of working, lean startup ways of thinking, actually help you in that domain to really find solutions for complex problems. If you look at a typical transformation, like a DevOps transformation, it is a complex problem. This means you need to have an approach in place which is mostly focused on the left top. Of course, there will be some elements which you can standardize. There will be some elements which you can analyze up front. But a lot of things that are happening in the left top corner. Make sure you have a response model and you have a transformation approach which actually tackles that. By the way, left bottom in chaos, you don't want to spend too much time on this. This is where you have, for instance, your emergencies. You just act and then you see what's happening, and that's actually your response model. So this is a new way of thinking about also your DevOps transformation. So make sure that you have the right way to deal with this. Now, the third epic fail, number 3, is, and I'm sure most of you will know Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris, I think we all know he can do everything, right? So he's a master at anything you can think of. And the thing is, if we want to compose a team, we see that we may have we may be inclined to think that we put all of the knowledge and all of the experience and all of the expertise that is needed to cover an entire value stream for a customer. We want to put them all in one team, right? So we have development knowledge, we have testing knowledge, we have application maintenance knowledge, we have infrastructure knowledge, networking knowledge, etc. We may be inclined to put all of that in one team, which means that we need to have 7, 8, or 9 Chuck Norrises in our team. And this is just not possible. And this is also not the way to think about DevOps. So if you think about DevOps, you need to have a different mindset on how can we actually look at what can a team handle. And this is where we talk about what we call cognitive or team cognitive load. And this means that if you approach a real DevOps transformation, if you look at it from a team perspective, what can you handle in a team? We have seen already that the DevOps has a number of elements, a number of themes, and a number of methodologies that all convene. And this means that we need to have a number of knowledge factors and aspects within a team which have to do with the methodology. Also, they have to do with the way that we look at our environment as well in the organization, some organizational elements. Also some cultural a way of working type of things. And of course, a lot of things that have to do with automation or our operational way of working. And if we think that we can have all of the knowledge and expertise, especially the complex knowledge from the left top, and to have really in-depth knowledge to tackle real complex issues all in one team, we have to create teams of 20, 25, 30 people to have all of that in one team. And that's just not possible. And this is why we see a lot of DevOps transformation actually only succeed if you realize you cannot put everything and every single knowledge item that you see right here all in one team. So we create, for instance, product teams which have a number of these expertises in their team. We have enabling teams which surround them and which help them to tackle the more complex issues around risk or test automation, setting it up, etc. And we see some platform teams that actually create services that those product teams can actually just pull out of the wall like a Febo croquette, right? So we have a different mindset, of course, that we want to create cross-functional, multidisciplinary teams, but there is a limit to this. And we have to realize we cannot put everything in one team. Yeah, so that is epic fail number 3. Please make sure you do not create Chuck Norrises. Then epic fail number 2 is please make sure also that don't stick with fluffy culture stuff. So if we look at DevOps transformations, the first thing that comes to mind, besides tooling, which also comes to mind in a lot of cases. So if I hear people talk about a DevOps transformation, they either talk about the technology side or they talk about the cultural side. And when people talk about the cultural side of DevOps, then the thing is that people have a tendency to make it too big, to make it too fluffy or too vague, actually. And what's happening is that if we ask teams or if we ask management in an organization to identify which are the behaviors that we need in our organization in order to move towards a DevOps way of working, I see a lot of things that you see right here. And all of the things that you see right here are true. Collaboration, empathy, customer-driven, end-to-end responsibility, transparent. No one will disagree that this is important, but no one will also know what to do differently tomorrow. So the thing is, we tend to have communication about the culture or mindset that we want to see, but if we stick with these items, we will never be able to take the next step towards, the new way of working and towards the new behaviors. So the key in having a good cultural transformation is to make sure that you chop up these big words like collaboration or customer driven, to chop them up in really small pieces, and then those small pieces are just tiny bits of behavior, and make sure that your change is focused on creating small steps, and every time you base your progress on a new behavior that you will see in your team. So if you want to move from A to B, if you want to move from a more, let's say, waterfall traditional mindset, where you have large releases, and you want to move towards a new way of working where you have small batches and small chunks of work going through your pipelines, also look at this from a cultural perspective. So don't have large cultural programs with big words and big values, but try to make them really small behaviors, and try to have the teams focus on the small behavioral steps. And to give you a few examples are these. So this is what, if we do sessions, behavior sessions with teams, the key is to have those big words that you see on top, like multidisciplinary, prioritization, or improve or feel safe, which everyone agrees with. But make sure that you create really tangible, measurable behaviors out of them. And you agree with your team, what kind of behaviors do we need from ourselves, or from our product owner, or from our suppliers, or whatever. And you make sure that you define 2, 3 key behaviors, focus on those behaviors. Pinpoint those behaviors, put them on your Scrum board, and every retrospective, try to look at the past 2 weeks. Did we actually see this behavior? If not, maybe it's not defined in the right way. Or maybe we just haven't shown it in practice yet. If we have, and if we have shown this type of behavior for a few weeks in a row, or for a few sprints in a row, it has probably sustained, which means we can focus on new behaviors. And that way you have an incremental way of just improving your behaviors. So don't stick with fluffy culture stuff, but make it small. Small steps, improvement.
And Dave, talking about, I see a nice question coming in the chat. Joost, maybe you can pose them yourself, because I think maybe this is about fluffy language, or how to chop it, how to make it concrete. Can you ask a question to Dave?
Yeah, I heard you say like we are going from A to B with the DevOps transformation, but shouldn't we call it then a transition instead of a transformation? So you have also respect to the current organization culture.
Yeah, but this is getting a bit semantical. I know what you're trying to say. So there's a lot of different words that you can use. So you can use transition, you can use transformation, you could also use change. So there's a number of different labels you can use. Transformation actually suggests that you need to create a new form, a new shape actually. Where transition, you could see transition as a bit broader, which also includes not only the shape itself, but also culture and what's inside the shape itself. So yeah, it's a matter of how you want to call it. But I agree with you. Maybe we should also call it DevOps transition as well. Yeah, fully agree.
Thank you.
Nice to hear that. And there's a second question coming into the chat. Mark, please come in.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Dave, because we have a speech that says what's measured gets done. Can you measure these behavior aspects, and is that useful?
Yes, you can. And that's exactly the methodology I'm using for actually pinpointing behaviors and changing them is called OBM, which is Organizational Behavior Management. And it's a scientific approach to changing behaviors. And one of the key benefits of this approach is that you actually make behavior measurable. in such a way that you should be able to, the Dutch word is called turven, but you're able to actually calculate or just, count physically the number of times that you have seen the behavior in practice. If you are not able to count the behavior, it is not observable enough, it is not tangible enough, it's not measurable enough, which means it's not pinpointed in the right way. So this means that if you are using metrics in your organization, which is one of the key drivers, I fully agree with, I will get back to that in a few minutes. But in using this approach, you can also actually make behavior a metric as well. But the first step is to make it really tangible. What is the behavior you want to achieve? What is the behavior you want to grow towards? And if you're able to make that tangible enough, you should be able to count it, which means you could make a metric out of it, which means it's quantitative. And of course, I have to say, having the qualitative dialogues in your team and in your organization are, in the end, way more effective and way more important than just the counting. But the counting actually helps to make it small, to make it tangible, to make it observable.
Okay, and then of course always with metrics, how can you make it something nice? Because most of the time it sounds like bureaucracy or punishment or something like that.
Yeah, and the key is to make it, and this is also where I'm reflecting on ownership a lot. So ownership is one of the key themes of tonight. If you want to have the teams actually take ownership of the behavioral change, you need to define these with the teams itself. If you tell the team and you say, I want these behavior, I want to see these behaviors from you, then the team will not feel owners of those behaviors. If you put them together with the team, and you put them on the Scrum board and you reflect on them, at each retrospective, the team will start to own those behaviors, and that is, the way that you need to go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, and then we get to number one, and number one is actually the key way to screw up your DevOps transformation. It is by far the most effective way, and it is to allow fake change in your environment. Which means that whether you're an engineer, whether you're a manager, whether you're a product owner or a tester or someone who does automation, whatever. So whatever your role is, whatever your function is, whatever your perspective is on the organization, if you see fake change around you, make sure that you actually call on it and that you try to change it in the good way. The thing is, if we look around us, we see a lot of what I have called in the beginning the labeling. So we see new labels coming in. For instance, I've seen a lot of transformations where, for instance, SAFe was being used, Scaled Data Framework, and it meant that we saw a number of project managers, and the project managers just got a new name, which was called Epic Owner. And they still had their old behaviors, they still had their old way of thinking, old way of working. They created teams around their epics, they created a business case around it, and they just had their old behaviors. And that is what I would call fake change. If you see something like this, please make sure that you call on this. If you're a manager, you need to also make sure that you have a role in this. You have a role in the change in your organization, whether you call it a transition, transformation, or change. You need to make sure that you change also the things that you're able to change as a manager. And as a manager, you're able to change the system. You're able to change the structure, for instance, also of the organization. And we need to make sure that you realize that culture always follows structure. It was Craig Larman who said this at first, one of the creators of the LESS framework, but culture follows structure. If you keep your old structure, please do not be surprised that the culture also doesn't change. The same, by the way, goes for your architecture. If you look at the architecture of the average system in your organization or at your client, you will see that the architecture actually reflects the communication lines and therefore also the structure of the organization. If you don't change the structure, you will not be able to change the architectures, you will not be able to change the cultures in your organization. And you have a role in that as a manager. So actually, you cannot just sit still and see what's going on. And this is what I would call this fake change, is what I have to give the credits to the Germans, because the Germans have come up with the perfect word for fake change, which is Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung. I think this is one of the best words ever, especially if you're playing Scrabble in German. It's called railway fake movement. So it is the feeling when you're in a train and you're at a train station and you see the train next to you moving. You have the feeling that you're moving yourself. That feeling is called Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung. And that is the feeling that a lot of people, also a lot of managers, have when they see change around them. They have the feeling that they're changing themselves as well. So they're keeping their old behaviors, as I just mentioned, for instance, for the project managers, but also for management. I've seen it at a company last year where they did a PI planning. They used SAFe, and at the end of the PI planning, they did a confidence vote. And with the confidence vote, people just put up one finger, 2 fingers, 3, 4, or 5, how much confidence they had, in the actual. Do we actually have the confidence that we will be able to achieve our goals? And most people scored 1, 2, or 3, which is a very low confidence. But actually, what happened was that the directors that were present in that meeting, they didn't give any notice to the fact that it was scored in such a way. They just kept pushing all of the features into the train, where actually the signal of the people was, we cannot handle this. We will not be able to make our promises and to make our commitment. So this is only frustrating the people. So this is not really changing your behaviors, but just having new names for the events or having new names for the roles. Yeah, so this is true Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung. Now, if we take ownership and the real basics of ownership and your role as a leader in this, it is first is to make sure that you have the right approach and you enable experimentation or probing. You can do that by setting the right constraints, having enabling constraints as we call them. The second one is to lead by example, showing by example how to actually show ownership, for instance, by doing it yourself, by solving impediments for your teams, and to drive for value. And driving for value is one of the things that I learned from my most recent DevOps transformation. I will show all of them at once to gain some time. And the key finding of this DevOps transformation, actually it was a really broad enterprise, broad transformation for a financial services company, about 3,000 people in total, around 1,000 people working in or around IT or technology. And I will pick out 2 of the main learnings. And first learning was actually to integrate both from top down and bottom up. So make sure that you set the right constraints so that people have a dot on the horizon. They have an actual thing that they can move towards in the long run. Some inspiring end goal. You have a role as a leader in order to set that certain dot on the horizon. But on the same hand, you need to realize that you need to start small, which means that also for teams you need to start experimenting, and you need to be able to actually expand those experiments and the learnings from that in a broader scale. For instance, for this company, we started with one team and then we built one value stream around it. And so we started with one value stream, and then when we saw that the value stream worked, we created more value streams. So don't think that it is just one big organizational design effort where you can just have a change from Friday to Monday. You need to make sure that you have small experiments and you have a long breath. And the last one I'd like to show is number 7, is to make value tangible. If we're talking about ownership, if we're talking about having people making the right decisions, whether you're in a team, whether you're in a value stream and talking about features, or in a release train or whatever, or whether you're on a portfolio level and actually deciding about, the big chunks of work and the large initiatives or the epics. In all cases, it's important to have a direct link with the value that you're creating for the company. So if you have a new feature, whether it's a business feature asked by someone in the business, or it's an enabler which is needed to maybe create a piece of infrastructure or to create a new platform or a new version or whatever, or so do some lifecycle management. All of those things that you do in the end should have a specific business value. So if you're able to actually create a business value framework in your organization where every story, feature, epic, whatever is going through your organization, everything needs to be coupled and directly related to a certain business goal or a certain chunk of business value. If it's not, it's probably not important enough, right? And that way, if you use this, you can also use a business value framework like this for your prioritization on all levels in your organization. But the key question here is to make value tangible. Everyone is talking about it, but no one actually knows how to make it really small, specific, and tangible. So the same as I said for behavior, the same you should be able to do for value. If you make it tangible and you make it measurable, then you're able to make steps on this. So this is basically what I wanted to share about the case study I've been involved in for the last year and a half. So if we conclude it, the 5 key ways to screw up your DevOps transformation. Number 5 is to keep calling it a DevOps transformation. Number 2 is to create entire Gantt charts and just old ways of project management to create a new DevOps way of working. Third one is to create Chuck Norris's. Number 2 is to stick with fluffy culture stuff. And number 1 is to allow fake change if you see it around you. So please, if you see Eisenbahnscheibenbewegung, make sure you tackle it. That's basically what I wanted to share. So are there any further questions?
I see clapping hands. Got it. Yeah, I've got a question, Dave. Next to that, maybe we give a live round of applause because I see some virtual hands clapping in. Dave, I've got a question because you mentioned some heroes. You mentioned Johnny Cash. You mentioned Chuck Norris. Have you an example of a personal hero you've met during your DevOps transformations?
Wow. Yeah.
Small or big?
I've met quite some. I've met quite some anti-heroes as well. But maybe one of the heroes. One of the heroes was at the same company I was talking about in the last case study. There was this one person who was part of one of the DevOps teams, and he was really critical, and he really didn't have a lot of with new fluffy words like DevOps and with Scrum and safe and it's all rubbish, and I just need to code and just let me mind my own business, and why do we even have a team? I know a lot myself. But by having this person actually, having one of the front runners and ambassadors in the end, having him as one of the ambassadors for the entire transformation, and the personal transformation that this person actually went through I think he was 62 years old or something like that, really stubborn man. But at the end, he was one of the best informal ambassadors that we could ask for. So he made a personal transformation during this by just, starting with really small steps on the behavioral part, but also by technology, by embracing new ways of thinking about containers and etc. And he just got enthusiastic about it by starting to use it. And that, yeah, personally, that's one of my favorite ambassadors.
I think that's a nice demonstration of ownership, starting
Absolutely.
to use it and starting to do it.
True. Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. I'm curious if is there a last question before we go to the break and to the story of Bas? Please come in if you have one. And if there are none, then
I have a question then, if nobody else has.
Mark, come in.
Of course, because we are quite busy at KZA with this DevOps context. And I appreciate that you point us out, keep talking about the why you do it, and not about the word itself or the method or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
But what do you think? We've kind of focus on the quality part of all of this. What is the value of a quality mindset in this transformation or whatever you think?
Yeah, I think quality, of course, quality is one of the 5 drivers, right? So to have better stuff, to have better, the better is about quality. I would say if you're doing DevOps right, you're building quality in the same way you're building security in, the same way you're building monitoring in, the same way you're building compliance in, etc. So in all cases, quality should be at the heart, and especially if you look at the methodologies that we're using in a DevOps context, most of them are derived from Lean. And if you look at all of the Lean fundamental principles, they all have a relationship with quality, whether it's the quality at the source, or whether it's making sure that you have tight feedback loops or whatever. I think quality is one of the key elements in this, and I'm not sure who it was, but I've heard the term quality at speed as a sort of another metaphor for DevOps, and I think that could be a good one, because if you have speed without quality, speed is totally useless. And so if you focus on quality, you get speed in the end. If you focus on speed, you get less quality. So you have to have the right perspective.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice to hear that. And maybe I'm a little bit bold to say, but I also think that quality provides ownership. And we're going to hear a nice I see we're going to have a nice break, and I was startled by a message in the chat. Bas, you're Dave does seem to be modest. You are spot on with your time boxing, and I didn't need to do anything, so that's another big round of applause. Thank you.
First time, thank you.
Perfect. For everyone, I'm scheduling a short break of 6 minutes. And then I hope that's enough for have a small stop, getting some drinks, stretch your legs. And then we have Bas ready for the next part. And then we see some quality in practice and DevOps transition in practice in a team. So it's worth to come back in about 6 minutes. Thank you all for your attention, and see you right back again. So let's see. Maybe we can turn on on cameras to see if everyone's back in the house. Oh, I see a lot of cameras. That's well waving. Everybody okay? And I see some thumbs up. Perfect. Are you guys ready for the next story? From our own hero, Bas. Because Bas, you are going to tell us a little bit.
Yes.
What you guys went through in your, maybe we call it a transformation, maybe we call it a transition. I give the floor to you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to your story.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Yeah, I will share my screen first. Can you all see my presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you, Marit. Yeah, first of all, I would like to introduce myself a little bit, give some background who I am. I started at KZA 3.5 years ago as a trainee. And after a month, I moved to Jumbo for my first assignment. So I was really excited about that, of course. And now I'm already 3.5 years at Jumbo. I've been in multiple teams. I got some experience with working in Scrum way, Kanban way, also working in Agile, actually an Agile transformation at Jumbo. So yeah, I joined a lot of teams, and in 2019 I joined my current team, which is the Inspiration web team. Also became Scrum Master of that team. And the team that I'm working for is basically responsible for the whole experience at jumbo.com, which is related to, for example, campaigns, like you see a small image of a race car from maybe the people from the Netherlands will recognize it as the car from Max Verstappen. But also, yeah, other things like recipes, shopping lists, all kinds of things that we use at Jumbo to inspire our customers. And our team is working mainly with Adobe Experience Manager, Nuxt, and Vue. So yeah, we are basically more of a front-end team, but we also have, of course, back-end for Adobe Experience Manager. So yeah, that's basically who I am and what I'm doing at Jumbo. Then for tonight, the agenda points. The first one, I will answer the question why Jumbo thought, well, let's start our DevOps transition. And afterwards, I will tell something about the pilot that we started, because we started off as a pilot. Then I will tell something about the challenges that we faced, and actually also this is related to taking ownership and the impact that we made with our team in our DevOps, there it is again, transition. And at the end, I will also tell something about things that are currently in progress and that we are currently still working on. Yeah, first, why DevOps at Jumbo? At the beginning of 2020, so basically last year in February, we received some sort of memo that they wanted to introduce DevOps at Jumbo. And yeah, our team, so that was pretty special actually, was asked to take part in this pilot. And yeah, I think we have 35 teams or something like that in Jumbo. And we were one of the 2 teams that were actually invited to take part in this pilot. So yeah, I was really excited about it. A big part of the team was actually not, so that's something that I will come back on later. Yeah, and they gave some explicit reasons why they thought we should start working DevOps. And I think this is something which Dave explained perfectly in his presentation. Things that the organization think about DevOps basically. So the first one was automate the hell of everything, so development, deploy, and of course it's all meant to be faster and deliver higher quality. We should have ownership from bottom to top, strong feedback cycles, and of course we should stimulate the learning curve, so like best practices and also more across teams. And it was all inspired by the Toyota Kato model. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, but that's some sort of example that is being used in DevOps transitions. according to the Toyota model. And yeah, it's also meant, like you see in this screen, in decreasing silos, culture, measuring your stuff, and the things that I just mentioned about delivering high quality and in a fast way. They also mentioned some implicit reasons why they thought we should start working DevOps. So more trust in the process, the people, and the intentions of the teams. Also more room for innovation and ideas, but also more focus on direct results, because in the Jumbo is a pretty big organization, and sometimes they had the feeling that it was not, that the results were not that great or fast, and they, in their mindset, it was like, well, if we're going to work in the DevOps way, it will probably be improved. So that was basically the idea behind the DevOps transition. What I mentioned before, in February we had our pilot day. It was like some sort of brainstorm day that we had with the whole team. So we came together. It was just before the COVID strike in the Netherlands in March, I believe. So we had a day with the whole team. It was actually quite fun. We all sit together, and in the morning we received some information about DevOps and some presentations. But I already felt like in about an hour or something like that in the team that a lot of people thought, oh, there we go again, another transformation. We had an agile transformation 2 years ago. We started working Scrum. We had Kanban. Now we will get DevOps. So yeah, what is the idea behind it? And just in 6 months, come on, what can we do in 6 months? So there was a lot of negative feeling in the team actually. But after lunch, that actually changed. And why it changed is that we received some sort of assignment with some sticky notes. And they basically said to us, well, what do you want to work on? What do you want to do in order to meet the DevOps goal in the end? So, from that moment, it was actually switched, because the team thought at that moment, well, there are a lot of things that we can actually do to improve. And at the end, it will also benefit DevOps, but for us now, it will be something that we can actually improve. And from that moment, we actually saw that one of the key things that we needed to do was definitely start measuring our work. We actually had a pretty good team, and it went pretty well, but measuring stuff, that was not something that we did that often. And I'm not just speaking about technical stuff like deployment frequency or mean time to recovery and stuff like that, but also more in general that if we were start working on something, we actually never measured it, or we did not check how our customers think about it, or using any, for example, heat maps or stuff like that. So that was definitely something that we wanted to do, and that was one of the key things that we would like to start on from that moment. That brings me to my next topic. We had a lot of challenges, of course, and it started off by measuring stuff, but we also saw that we wanted to be more predictable in our way of working. And one of the things that was actually really bad in the team was our cycle time. And what I mean with our cycle time is basically from the moment that we start on working on a story until the moment it is closed, it took nearly 11 days to complete, which is basically more than an entire sprint. And that was something that everyone thought, well, that's really bad. That's something that we would like to improve. But if we want to improve it, we need to measure it. Otherwise, it will not work. And what we also saw is, this is one I actually put in here an image of a Lego block. And we had a big building, which you see in the right corner, which is the Empire State Building. And actually for the team, the whole DevOps ID felt like the Empire State Building, like one big giant thing that we want to build. But we thought maybe we just need to start with smaller pieces and just see how we improve and do it step by step. So that small yellow Lego brick that I added on the page was basically representing in this example, the cycle time that we wanted to work on. But the question remains, yeah, how do we want to improve this? Yeah, just from that moment on, we thought, well, we want to improve our cycle time, but yeah, how are we going to do that? So yeah, the first thing was by measuring our cycle time every sprint and see how it was actually doing. And one of the key things that you can do in Jira, which is pretty helpful, is you can look on stories which are actually taking a lot of time to finish, or you can see that in a big graph, and then you can focus on specific stories to see where it goes wrong or which stories are actually increasing your average cycle time during a sprint. So one of the things that we noticed was that, yeah, being critical during refinement was definitely something that we needed to work on, because we were overconfident that we can handle all kinds of things, and there was a general feeling from, we can do that. That doesn't take that much time. I think we can also fit that into the sprint. That feeling was actually killing our cycle time, because we were working on so many different things at the time, and yeah, that made it hard and difficult to reach our goal. So yeah, we also noticed that we had quite often big stories into our sprint, and yeah, that automatically lead up to difficulties, and also to a higher risk of not finishing it in time. And from that moment on, we looked at every refinement, and also during planning, if you could split up our stories in a better way to stimulate working together. So, for example, if we had a big story, we sliced it up into really smaller stories, which, for example, 3 developers in a team could work on the same time, and at the end merge it together. And also pair programming. And maybe you think, yeah, pair program, how will that work in a Corona time? But actually in our team, we found out that it was working pretty good. And there are a lot of tools, of course, to share your screen, but also work together with 2 programmers on one story. So pair program was really successful during Corona times in our team. And yeah, maybe that's definitely something that I would recommend doing also remotely. What we also did is we had a look at our definition of done and definition of ready. That will make it also more easy to plan your stories, and to have a clear goal in mind of each story, because yeah, quite often we had those fake stories with some requirements, and at the end there was something else that came around the corner, and we noticed once we were using I would say some sort of template with some requirements, and if we filled that in at the beginning of the refinement, it was pretty clear what we needed to do, and that also improves basically our cycle time, and yeah, we became more predictable by doing so. And one of the things that what I already mentioned, we took quite often a lot of work at the same time, and what we now did in a different way is just focusing on the stories that were actually almost done, and always focus on getting things done instead of trying to do everything at the same time. So I think it's better to, for example, say one story we didn't even start with that one, then end up with 6 stories that were almost done. So yeah, the focus was more really on getting stuff done and making sure that we were predictable and delivering our work in time. And yeah, that basically resulted in pretty nice graph, I think. What you can see here is our average cycle time in 2020 from January to November, and our average cycle time, what I already mentioned, was 11 days in 2019, and in 2020 we dropped off in the last month to 3.5 days average for each story. Now, in the whole year, it was a bit more, about 6 days. So yeah, that was a pretty cool achievement. And actually, the fun part here was just that the team was like every sprint, let's have a look at the cycle time, how it's going. So it was like some sort of competition to do it every time better in a different way, and to see where we could improve. And those 5 points that I mentioned here were actually brought up during our retros when we were actually looking into the cycle time to see what we could do to make it better. So that one brick that I mentioned, so basically the cycle time and being more predictable, was not one brick anymore. It became 5 bricks, and those 5 bricks were actually the foundation of our Empire State Building, I would say. And I'm not saying that we already have that Empire State Building by now, but it was, I think, a good foundation to start with, and it really helped us in improving our process. But yeah, there was definitely more, because this is just the process part, but we did more, of course. One of the other things that we noticed, and it was also a topic that came on the table quite often during our retros, is that we found it hard to give feedback to each other within the team. We had quite a new team, but also some newer people, and some people that maybe are a little bit more introvert, so to say. So it was hard to give feedback to each other within the team. And as a Scrum Master, I found it also hard to make some progress there, because if you don't give feedback to each other, then it will be really hard to improve, of course. So what I did in the second part of 2020, I thought maybe I can help out the team a little bit with this. And I came up with some sort of a form. And you see a screenshot of this form with some basic questions to ask personal feedback, but also some questions about the person interest, or just random different questions that you would like to ask. So I set up a meeting for this, and I invited the whole team to take part, and we created two smaller groups. And we just started with this feedback form. And at the end of the meeting, I asked the team, what do you think about it? And did you enjoy it? And what did we learn about it? And everyone was really enthusiastic about it. And they already said, well, we should do this more often. And I actually meant this is a one-time exercise. So from that moment, I was like, this is actually quite good that everyone really liked it, and also said we want to do it more often. And they also said, well, we want to come up with our own questions next time. And from that moment, I'm not saying this is the only reason, but it was definitely something which helped us in becoming more, improving our communication in our team. People ask a question more often, also regarding the product owner, for example, and for example, saying no to the product owner. That was something that was really hard, I think, 2 years ago. And since last year, that was something which was happening more often, and also asking, for example, that why question, which Dave also mentioned in his presentation. I think that really helped us also in growing into this part, and being more vocal also to each other. So that was something which really helped us as well, and that communication basically dropped out during the retros, but also in the discussion about the cycle time. So this is again another brick that came out. Our journey towards DevOps. Also, of course, we had some things that we wanted to tackle regarding technology. One of the things was, of course, test automation, and test automation was something which was really hard to introduce in our team, because we are a content team, and the main idea has always been in our team. We are creating content, so what is there to automate? What is there to test? Because our content editors are changing it all the time, so does it make sense to set up some automation? Of course, some different ideas about this, but I found it really hard to make the team enthusiastic for it. So I thought, well, maybe we should also see this again as some sort of brick, and let's convert it in something that we want to do, and it's basically measuring our work. And so I came up with a meeting, and I invited the whole team for it. So not just development, but the whole team. And we discussed it. And out of that meeting, came some ideas to actually monitor our work in a different way. And one of those ideas was, for example, check the health of our pages, or most important components, which should always be online and always be there, even if the content switches. So from that moment on, we started building our own test framework in Cyprus. And I think the nice thing was that all the developers from the first moment said, well, we would like to contribute in it, and we also do it in the same language. So every developer from that moment on writes also automated tests in JavaScript. And yeah, I thought, well, again, this is something which the whole team should be part of. And we have also, for example, 2 UX designers in our team. And they were also interested in it. So we thought, let's introduce a channel. We use an intern chat system within Jumbo, which is called Slack. And we came up with some notification system that every time you see a screenshot here on the page, that if the test suite ran on production with some smoke tests, that a report was presented in the chat. And the funny part was actually that the UX designers were peeking at it the whole time. And also, for example, if something went wrong, that they were actually alerting the team right away. So yeah, I think that was a perfect example of making it also visible to the whole team and not just the developers. And I think the fun part of checking your stuff and also give some sort of confidence to the team was really helpful in it. And we also thought there are a lot of technical improvements that we need to make, and it is not just test automation, but also other technical improvements. We were really eager to claim every sprint. Then we have 30% rule in at Jumbo that there is 30% room for technical improvement. Yeah, and I think basically no team is actually using that for the whole part. But we said, well, at least we want to make sure that every sprint we have like 2 or 3 stories that we want to pick up to improve our technical depth. And yeah, that was also something that we can easily measure and see in our sprint. And yeah, became visible afterwards. One other thing what we actually started to doing was and this is I think a really key moment in our transition in taking ownership, is using metrics to measure customer satisfaction. As I mentioned before, we are the inspiration team, and yeah, they are of course really relying on what our customers think about it, because inspiration can be quite fake, I would say, and there are many different ideas about how inspiration should be done on the Jumbo website. So we started using metrics in this, and one of those things was some sort of feedback channel where all the direct feedback from our customers was represented. And at first it was quite scary, because you should see some really direct feedback from our customers, and some customers were really angry in the first period of Corona that they couldn't order online because all the slots were overbooked. So yeah, there were a lot of angry reactions in the channel, and yeah, not everyone liked it, of course. But sometimes there were also really good, helpful examples of people that were facing problems. And yeah, one of those things that popped out was an issue that we had with the ordering in a list. And we saw that issue in the morning, and it was reported by a developer to a product owner in the team. And the product owner said, well, we need to fix that. And the product owner the developer was already basically working on it to fix it, because he was like, yeah, we need to do it right away. And that was a perfect example. In the morning it was checked, the bug was found, and at the end of the day, it was already fixed and tested and on production. And that was really success for our team. And we were really happy about it, because we could actually do something. And like 2 days later, we also received feedback from that customer that it was really happy that we fixed it. So I put in the fun part here again, because the team thought, well, we can actually do stuff ourselves instead of work that comes to us by business or stakeholders, and then by the product owner ends up in our team. So that was, I think, a key moment within the team, that we thought we should do more ourselves and check our work and look if we can do improvements ourselves instead of work that comes to us. So about that ownership, I think in this year we are improving even more. we started a month ago with experimenting with innovation days. This is actually a really cool initiative. I'm really excited about it. I started this with the Scrum Master of the app inspiration team, and we are also working more closely together nowadays. So this is actually two teams that are working on the same things because we want to align more between app and web. Yeah, we came with this idea that the teams are actually free in this day to work on topics that they like and that are actually delivering something. So we are also building a dashboard, for example, with heat maps and also Jumbo's customer service center, which is actually putting in reports there. So we can check how our work is behaving and how our people are liking things or not. And those inputs we are using for those innovation days to see if we can come up with ideas to improve things. And I think the last innovation day was really cool because the whole management was also there, and they said, well, we want to do more with this. So they also gave us some space in our roadmap to actually organize those days. So like every month we have those innovation days now, where we actually working on new stuff based on things that we are measuring. And you see a lot of different ideas coming from there, like technical improvements, for example, page speed to improve it, but also we have now an idea to make offline shopping and online shopping working more together, so that people in the store can actually use those online lists, and for example, also have the most efficient route in the store, how they should walk based on the products that they are buying. So we have all kinds of experiments there, and a lot of people in the team are taking more and more ownership in it, and it's basically going a bit in the other direction now, that we are telling the business what we are going to do in order to improve things or also reach goals, because we have specific goals that we want to reach, but the how question is now filled in by the team, and I think I think it's a really cool change and shift in the way of working there. Yeah, of course, we want also to increase our test automation percentage. I think we covered all basic things, but we want to do this further and also look at different components and things that we can automate in order to give more, that we have more confidence about our domain. And also, of course, to speed up the testing process there. And for this year, what we also did, we set some KPIs, which are actually decided by the team to improve. And that's basically meant for all different things. So for example, test percentage coverage that we want to increase, and then we gave the number how much we want to increase, and then every quarter we can see how far we are, and at the end of this year we can check those KPIs that we set ourselves and check how we did. And I think that's a big part of continuous improvement. So we're still searching for ways to improve. I think actually a fun part of this is that within Jumbo, the whole KZA that I'm part of is actually in a transition to DevOps, and because we already started last year, those goals and boundaries that were set by all teams were not that interesting to us. Dus, for us it was actually a moment to think about our own goals, because we want to set the next step, and that was actually also the reason that I put in DevOps pilots between quotes, because for us it was never pilot. From the moment that we started, we thought we want to do this, we want to keep doing it, and no way that we are going to say after 6 months we are going to stop with it. So for the rest of the organization it was a bit on hold, but for us it's one big journey, I would say, with a lot of Lego blocks still to add, I would say. Are there any questions?
Wow, Bas, thanks for sharing your very practical and inspiring story. I see a lot of applause coming in, so very cool. And I see I see a question in the chat, still from Bart Hoofd van Idekingen. Maybe you can join and pose your question, because I think it's partly answered and maybe there's still some room for extra information. Oh, we do hear you a little bit badly. Your microphone is quite soft, Bart.
That's right. Now it's much
there
better.
You are. There you are. Thanks.
Bas, thank you very much for your nice story. One question. You said in one of your slides, measure everything to improve. And my question is, how do you prioritize things or measurements that you are making within your team? It's not a standard item on a backlog, I presume.
No, that's true, and that also has a bit to do with those KPIs that I mentioned. But one of the things, we started a journey with what I mentioned was the cycle time, because we thought that was one of the baddest things in our team, and we're actually a bit ashamed of it. So that was actually our starting point, and from there we actually started searching in things that we would like to improve, and those were actually prioritized. For example, during retros, we said, we have action points in every sprint. So we also add those action points within our sprint. So they are like tasks in our Jira board. So the whole team sees it every day. And those are actually the prior points for that sprint or for that period, because not every point can be finished in one sprint. But that's some sort of prioritization that we use.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bart. Are there other questions? I see it not right now. I see some discussion over Scrum and a Kanban. It's nice that you interact in the chat. I see Dougal reacting. Thanks, Bas. Besides an awesome and inspiring walkthrough in the DevOps growth of the team, we also did learn you like Lego, with a big smile. If there are not more questions, then I have a question for you. If you still have the time, I would like you to go to menti.com and enter a pin. I did the instructions in the chat, and I will share my screen with you, because I'm very curious. Let's see if it works. I'm very curious, after these two inspiring stories, what's your opinion? If your team is not improving, it is because of lack of ownership. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree? Nice, and I see 80%. Oh no, it's still moving. It's still moving. The disagreement's running up. Disagreement's running up. Still, I give you guys still some seconds to finish it off. And I check. Oh, still the agreement part is now winning. It's still moving a bit. It's moving a bit. Within 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I close the voting for this one. Oh, we have the 80-20 rule. How nice is that? I'm curious. Can someone come in who is a volunteer to defend the statement, I agree with it? If your team is not improvement, it's just because lack of ownership. Who wants to comment on that? Can I have a volunteer?
I will volunteer, I guess.
David.
The one thing I would say as a caveat to it is that it's not only ownership. But I think in the case of our company, where we are with developers and DevOps and support and stuff, ownership does play a large role in that if someone doesn't feel like they own it or doesn't feel like what they do is really going to help move it, they'll push it off to other people to do. Whereas if they move it, it helps that feeling of ownership of doing what's required and pushing it forward.
Check. Thank you, David. If someone wants to react or to add on, maybe someone from someone who entered disagree. I don't see any hands. I do see some smiling faces.
Yes.
Ah, Joost, there we have Joost and Freek. Come in. Welcome.
Yeah, Freek, go ahead.
Okay. I said I disagree because I think it's also necessary that the management supports the team. If there's no support from the management, you can take ownership, but I think it's a hell of a job that you can receive those results that Bas presented.
Nice, and maybe we can ask a question to Bas. Bas, how did you experience that at Jumbo? How did you experience the support of the management?
Well, what I experienced was that from the moment that we're actually also sharing our metrics, for example, but also the things that what we are doing during our sprints in the review moment. That was also the moment that the business were actually started to become more enthusiastic about it, and also were inviting people from our team to meetings to see what they were doing from sort of portfolio management. And that was actually the bridge that we needed to get a seat at the table. And yeah, from that moment on, it went on and on to the moment that we are more and more in the lead and are actually telling the business what we want to do based on our findings and measurements. And what I also encountered is that taking ownership was actually great fun, because the team was sometimes really fed up with the amount of work that was always coming through and was always way too much to handle. From the moment that we could decide to work on topics, that increased also the fun part within the team.
And can I also react on what Freek said?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you something, and you're jumping in. Perfect.
Well, maybe it's a different perspective on what you said, because I think indeed you're right that in a lot of cases it has to do with the fact that management is not taking the right behaviors. Where you could say that, you know, the statement was it was lack of ownership, and I would say it's lack of ownership of management. So if they don't show the ownership of setting the right enabling constraints for the team to shape their own method, to actually create improvement items themselves, to actually find time for the improvement items, and maybe deliver on new demands a bit less, and start improving on your backend a bit more, or your lifecycle management activities or whatever. That's up to the team. So if you set the right constraints as a manager, as a leader, then you're showing ownership as well. So it may also be related to lack of ownership, but then of management.
Yeah, okay.
I can agree with that. I stated disagree because I believe it should be management to create a safe environment so the team is able to fail and learn from it, so they can actually improve. And that's not necessarily a lack of ownership of the team. I think that a team can do still great things, but yeah, you need to have the environment set.
What I find most important in improvements, especially for teams, is that you always make sure, whether you're a Scrum Master or someone with a different background or a team member or whatever, is that you help the team to find the right improvements to improve on. Because there's no such thing as more waste as to spend time on an improvement which is not the bottleneck. So there's so many improvements that you can find in your team, whether it's technological or it's related to your way of working or behaviors or whatever. And if you spend a lot of time on all of those things, but if you're not tackling the real bottleneck, which is hindering your flow, which is hindering you from achieving your goal, then you're wasting a lot of time of your team, and you're getting a lot of frustration of the team as well. So always make sure that you tackle always the bottleneck instead of, you know, all of those 20 improvements that you can solve.
That's what I meant when I was thinking of the ownership thing, right? It wasn't that someone physically owns that, but if all of the team feel involved in it and supportive of it, and as part of the active group that's working on it, and that they're not sidelined or marginalized, or that the stuff that they're going to suggest that help make that better is just going to be pushed off to the side, is not relevant. That when you own it and you're part of the success of that helps you do what you need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. I think it's a nice reflection of some of the learning points you told Dave about the inspiring goals, getting the dot on the horizon, but also allowing to experiment. That was the one, and that's about ownership of the management. And Bas, you told us about ownership of your team and how you turn things around, not let everything told by management, but measure yourself, see what can be improved, what are the real bottlenecks where Dave was talking about, and then getting the enthusiasm by making visible what you guys were improving. It's nice and impressive. I think Mark, come in.
A question to Bas, because I know his story. I heard it before. When Dave talks about you should really improve the bottleneck, can you point that one out in your team, and maybe you knew it right from the start, or maybe in hindsight, did you discover this most important bottleneck for your team, and what was it?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, it was definitely communication. But the first thing that we wanted to work on as a team was the cycle time, because I felt as a Scrum Master, I didn't want to push the team in a direction to say we need to work on that, because I felt if we want to make a success out of it, we need to all have the same idea about the things that we want to work on. And the whole team said, well, we have a cycle time of about 11 days, which is basically more than an entire sprint for each story. And we were really ashamed about it. We wanted to do something about it. So I felt at that moment that was our bottleneck, because if we
cycle time is a result.
Yeah, indeed. But after the moment that we thought we want to work on that cycle time, we found out which are actually the reasons. Those were those 5 bricks that I meant. Those were actually the reasons why we were not predictable, or at least caused it. And from that moment on, we started working on all those things. But the whole thing that we wanted to change was to become more predictable. That was our bottleneck, I would say.
Cool. Thank you, Bas. I see it's already 8:45. I got some final questions, and I think because they are valuable to our speakers as well. Are you guys still on Menti? Can I see some hands or some thumbs up? If yes, perfect. Then I will ask you the last question by going to Menti again. Oh, let's see. Wait 1 second. I will share my screen right now. And I will move on to the next question. Can you please add what's your most important takeaway for tonight? It's nice to see what you guys picked up.
Yeah, I was expecting that Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung.
Nice. Fluffy culture stuff. I see fake change. I see ownership or ownerships. De Eisenbahnscheinbewegung, the fake change. Go from A to B through B. Chuck Norris is awesome. Perfect. Nice to see the takeaways. I will still keep the Menti open, so if you haven't finished it yet, please feel free to join or to leave your comments. I will share this word cloud, of course, with you, just as I will share the slides and the recordings. And in return, I hope you will do us a favor and take some time now or tomorrow, if you will get our email, to give your opinion in still only 5 questions. I think you can finish it in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes time. For us, it's very valuable to see. We learned measure everything, so we also want to measure the how you guys rate it and how you guys perceived this knowledge session. For me, it was really a blast to have you all here and to listen to Dave, to listen to Bas, 2 stories from different perspectives on ownership, one more from a portfolio level or a holistic level, I can say, and one from a very practical and inspiring team level, showing us how to do it in the real life, maybe.
Just
yes.
to interrupt, we get some feedback that the current form isn't working.
Thank you.
We have the same issue as well, so we have to maybe we can see if we can.
I think I have to switch something, so I will check it out. I will check it out and we'll fix it. I hope immediately. I will leave you guys here in the room, and I will send a better version of the form in the chat, and I will send it by email to you. If you want just to exchange some ideas, to talk further on the topic, feel free. We'll leave the room open, and I will thank you guys again. Dave, Bas, thank you for sharing the story, and you all for thank you for your being here tonight, and I hope to see you again, because we will still organize new kennis sessies, I will say, knowledge sessions along the way this year about the topic QA in DevOps. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are there any questions that people would like to get answered, or cases that you want to present? You can maybe think about as a group.
No, I would just like to say that I really appreciate being part of this and being able to take part in it from Canada. I'm in a smaller group here, and I don't often have access to this kind of thing, so this is really beneficial for me. So thank you guys very much, Bas and Dave, for the presentations as well.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. And you were one also was asking about Kanban,
yes.
Agile, Scrum, right?
Yeah.
And there was quite a lot of mentioning as well in the chat, and I think it's not something that's divided. It's just everybody has probably their own methods and see what works and what doesn't work. But one thing that I do, and at least I can say from the coaching experience that I've been having, is that if a team in particular is not fond of particular framework, for example, and wants to do less meetings, because every developer wants to do less meetings, and every developer wants to do less presentation because they want to work on more code, that there are always reasons why a particular framework isn't working. And it's really, I think it's important for a good Scrum Master or somebody who's trying to coach or help that organization or team, is to look in what is causing the issue. So what is the actual problem with changing priorities? Why is sprints not getting finished? So why do we actually want to change towards a more Kanban way of working? Because then we can work on every story just down the line. So what's the actual core of the problem before changing up a framework? And that's actually one of the things Bas and I discussed as well. I think when within Jumbo, where the same thing happened, where a team wanted to work Kanban at a certain point, and it's usually it doesn't say that would help or doesn't help, but it is a fair question to ask. What is the actual problem, instead of it might be the framework.
Yeah, and I think in our case, we were doing sprints for a little bit more than a year, and we were just finding that within a couple of days of starting it, it would start to fall apart because priorities would change or workloads would change or whatever. So we adjusted the Kanban for a couple of months. We're going to try it and just see how it goes. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, we'll try something else. And the key is that we're all focused on trying to schedule and get the work done and move ourselves forward instead of falling back. So that's what's important.
Right.
Okay, everyone, I need to go. Thanks for having me. Huh?
Thank you, Dave.
Have a great evening.
See you.
Good evening.
Dave, thanks.
Dave.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hij doet het nog steeds niet, jongens, de link. Dus ik ga hem opnieuw maken. Ik weet niet wat er mis is.
Ja.
Measure and
Freek, je
improve.
staat op mute.
Ja, sorry. Heb je nog ergens een linkje aanstaan dat die nog niet ingevuld kan worden?
Ja, ik ben aan het kijken wat er misgaat.
En Bas, ik ben echt onder de indruk van de stappen die jullie binnen het team hebben gemaakt. Echt leuk
Dankjewel.
om te zien. Dat geeft de burger moed, zal ik maar zeggen.
Ja,
je ziet vaak dat ontwikkelingen toch op een andere manier verlopen.
Ja, nou, precies. En ik denk wat ik ook aangaf aan het begin van mijn presentatie, is dat toen we de dag, zeg maar, hadden, de brainstorm sessie, dat het team, zeg maar, op de hoogte werd gesteld van, hey, jullie gaan de pilot doen, wat eigenlijk wel in principe opgelegd werd, merkte je ook meteen de reactie van, oh god, daar gaan we weer. Dus de zoveelste transformatie, waarom moeten we dit nu weer gaan doen? En iedereen stond op zijn achterste benen. En pas vanaf het moment dat ze werden gezegd, hier heb je sticky notes, ga maar bepalen waar jullie zelf aan willen werken. Toen sloeg de moed om. Omdat het eigenlijk een stukje ownership toen op dat moment al vanuit de business werd gegeven van, ja, het is een pilot, we weten eigenlijk allemaal hier weinig van, we moeten gaan experimenteren. Ga het maar invullen. En dat was denk ik het moment dat er wel wat meer draagvlak ontstond. Dat mensen enthousiast werden van, we kunnen zelf die invulling aangeven.
Ja, maar het is ook in dat geval belangrijk dat het team het gevoel heeft dat ze inderdaad dat stukje vrijheid hebben. Want vaak zie je bij verandering die wordt opgelegd vanuit het management, dat uiteindelijk toch ook het team erop af wordt gerekend. En iedere verandering gaat gepaard met misstappen. En op een gegeven moment zijn door alle reorganisaties team ontzettend bang om misstappen te maken. Omdat je erop afgerekend wordt.
Ja, nou ik moet zeggen dat gevoel hebben wij gelukkig, tenminste ik heb het zelf zo niet ervaren en volgens mij het team ook niet, dat we er echt op afgerekend zouden worden. Het enige wat wel werd gezegd, het is een pilot, dus we kunnen niet garanderen dat het zo blijft. Maar we zeiden wel tegen elkaar, oké, als we dit gaan doen jongens, dan gaan we dit ook doen. En dan gaan we het niet voor een half jaar doen. Dus het team had wel zoiets van, dit gaan we dan ook echt omarmen in plaats van het half doen en met het gevoel misschien over een half jaar stoppen we ermee of zo. Dus dat gevoel leeft bij ons niet.
Wat dat betreft verbaast het me dat toch een team waarvan jij beschrijft dat het toch wat meer introverte personen zijn, die sprong toch hebben durven te wagen met z'n allen. En ik vind dat echt leuk om te horen.
Ja, nou dankjewel.
Zeker. Goed verhaal, Bas.
Ja.
Thanks.
Eens.
Ja, leuk.
En
vaak dat het snel gaat, hè? Nou, ik deel iets op een
agile sessie.
Wat zeg je?
Ja.
Hij doet het niet.
Precies, Erwin.
Deze laatste ook niet? Die
Nee,
ik je nu heb geappt?
ook niet.
Nou,
vaak
ik moet hem,
vinden-
ja, ik zie het. Ik moet hem echt opnieuw maken dan. Ik weet niet wat er mis is.
Of er gaat wel niets bij Microsoft mis.
Nou, hij geeft wat technische ideeën, hij zegt technische dingen, maar we gaan het,
Hoe technisch is dat?
ja, ik
soort
weet niet,
testen?
sessie-idee nog iets,
Oh,
met
ja,
heel
voor
veel
2.
cijfers.
Dat betekent doet niet.
Nee, het is een idee. Zou natuurlijk zomaar kunnen zijn dat je er nog ergens eentje hebt.
Ik heb ze allemaal uitstaan.
Heb je nog wel een screenshot van de laatste versie, Mariet? Anders
Ja,
ga
heb
ik
ik
ook in de
nog.
recording.
Ik kan,
En je hebt
ik
ook
kan
niet
hem-
een andere
recording
vorm
staat trouwens
aangepast
aan,
naar
Mariet.
deze.
Oh ja, die zal ik nu eens even uitzetten.
Je hebt ook
Dank
geen
je.
andere die je al had aangepast naar deze.